Welcome back. In this video, I'm going to share with you how I almost ended up in prison instead of going on to serve in the Special Air Service. So if that's why you're here, you've come to the right place. Stick around. Okay, so I'm going to try and get through this with as fewer ums and ahs as possible, and hopefully in one take, because I cannot be bothered editing it. To give you some context around how and why I'm sharing this personal story, not really something that I'm super proud of, or definitely not something that I'm looking to boast about. There is nothing to boast about with it. But what I've discovered and through the interactions and conversations that I've had, so I've been fortunate to meet with a bunch of people, whether they're full-time serving in the military, from ORs or privates, NCOs, right through to officers, that have had questions about the New Zealand and the Australian Special Air Service. At the same time, I've had some great conversations with civilians who are not serving or actively serving members within the Defence Force, but have goals or aspirations to go straight from Civvy Street and look to apply to make it into the unit. And a number of times, not every time, but a number of times, there have been some of those people that have asked, so why didn't you get badged in the New Zealand SAS? Like, you said you passed selection, you said you were on cycle, on the New Zealand SAS cycle, and that you completed it. How do you not get badged? Like, can you go all the way through cycle and right at the last point, just before officially receiving your beret, can you just have the rug pulled out from underneath you and no longer, you're not badged, see you later, you got to go. So that's just been the comments or the thoughts of those people when they've blurted them out to ask a genuine question. And the truth is, they didn't look to pull the rug out from underneath me, and they don't look to pull the rug out from underneath anybody. There's a few things in there. What I've typically done when people have asked that question, I've given like a 2-minute version. I've basically said something along the lines of, I was dumb, I made a silly decision, made a mistake, I left the unit no option, and they had to send me back to battalion for 6 months, but they left the door open. They said I could come back, and I got upset and threw my toys out of the cot and said, nah, bugger yous, I'm going to go to Australia instead, if that's how you're going to treat me. So, and that's typically been the response, so it's a lot less than 2 minutes. But there have been those few occasions where people that I've spoken with that have wanted to know more. They're like, no, like, what happened? I've heard that there's a bit more to it than that. And each time I've done that, those individuals have gone, man, there's a lot of information in there that could potentially be really helpful for people that are considering, whether they're military or civilians, that are considering wanting to join the unit. So with that, I thought, oh, okay, thanks for that. Now that I'm back on YouTube or started up a channel again, I figured, well, why not share it? And if it does help, like it did impact those people that I was lucky enough to speak with, then maybe it might be useful for somebody else who might be considering to do the same, and hopefully help somebody out there avoid the same mistakes that I made. So, easiest thing to do is to provide some context and try to deliver it in a, I suppose, sharing a story of what happened. So I'm on past selection, got the great news that I'd been deemed, that I was deemed worthy, I suppose, for want of a better term. Suitable is the word I was looking for, and I've been deemed suitable to progress onto the Special Air Service cycle of training. Now, the cycle of training was anywhere between 8 to 10 months in duration, where you're doing all your different courses. I've been progressing through, and we got, it might have been around May-ish, something like that. May have been earlier, may have been later, may have been May, June, something like that. And one of my friends on the cycle, it was his birthday coming up, and we were going to his family or member of his family's place or friend's place. I don't remember the exact details. And they were hosting. And so myself and the rest of the cycle, the majority of the cycle, we went to the party. We're at the party, met a bunch of people, there were a whole bunch of civilians and stuff there. It's cool. The night was going well. This was back in 1999. So back then I had stopped drinking, but I should have mentioned this, but for whatever reason, I don't even remember it, but I had had a not a very good conversation with my missus at the time, who's now my wife, and I thought, bugger it, I'm drinking. So probably not a great idea. But anyway, was having a good time, drinking, spending time with mates, good music, and I went down the driveway. So we went down the driveway because we didn't want to go traipsing in and out of our mate's home to use the bathroom. We went down the long driveway, or I remember it being reasonably long, to do our business against the fence down there. Not great, I know, but that's what we did. Anyway, as I went down, I'd finished. I was walking back, and there was a guy who seemed to be really upset, yelling at this other person that was walking away. Well, looked like somebody walking away in the distance. Anyway, by this time it was pretty late. It was probably closer to midnight, maybe a little bit after midnight. And we're just in the suburbs, homes around, neighbours, and we're having this party. The guy that I saw when I was walking back was upset, yelling, seemed to be upset. I said to him, bro, don't worry about it. Just come back to the party. Like, forget him. And he was upset. Well, this is my recollection of it anyway. He seemed upset, told me to F off. And I was like, bro, don't worry about him. I considered myself a pretty happy-go-lucky, intoxicated person, or when I've had a bit to drink. Not somebody looking to get into trouble. Mind you, I think I did get into my fair share of trouble in battalion. Anyway, as I tried to just, don't worry about it, I recall being shoved, pushed. And that sort of caught me by surprise, but I still wasn't, I wasn't really thinking of, he's not really being that aggressive. It's just a little push, like, who cares? And then I went to go, bro, don't worry about it. Let's just go back in. Because that other guy was gone. And then all I remember is just being cracked. And I ended up with a black eye. And I don't know how instantly that came up, but obviously the next day or a few hours later, I know I had a black eye. And when that happened, basically I just got angry. I got upset that this would happen, and we got into it. Long story short, in that moment, when we're fighting now at this stage, I had clearly gotten the upper hand, and I was on top, and I was hitting him. Again, definitely not something that I'm proud of. I had to be pulled off. So the guys saw what was happening. Guys come out, pulled me off. I was still really wired and upset, like, to have been cracked like that, when I thought I had done nothing wrong. That was my thought anyway. Maybe I did something wrong, I don't know. And so got pulled off. We got separated. I believe from memory, this is where things started. He left and was coming back, so I went out to meet him again. We got into it again. I had to get pulled off again. And it seemed like, I don't know how long it was, but it seemed like not long after the police were there. I'm assuming the neighbours called the police. Police were there. I was being a real cheeky prick to the police. I was using a baby voice. So that I can't remember the exact words, but one of our guys on our cycle had this real knack of using a baby voice when he's imitating somebody. Oh, but Staff, I don't want to do that. And so I had developed this habit through trying to imitate my mate, and he did it really well. But when the police were saying things, I was using that voice in response to them, and my mates were trying to tell me to shut my mouth. Basically, they got me in the car and they got me away. Went back to barracks, got out of that scene. I had no idea what had happened to that other guy. Police came to the barracks, knocked on the door. I got taken in for questioning into the police station. I knew what it was for. I knew why they were there. I believe they read me my rights. Not that, I was 21 at the time, 21 years of age. I knew that getting in a fight was wrong, but I felt, hey, I didn't start it. And so I figured just tell the truth of what happened, and hopefully, I expected some sort of punishment, but I did not expect to be looking at facing a 6-year jail sentence, which was the maximum at the time, or I did not expect to be charged with wounding with intent to cause grievous bodily harm. And at that time, from memory, that type of charge came with a maximum penalty of 6 years imprisonment. So police picked me up. I went with them. I was no longer imitating them like a child. And I got to the police station, and they asked me, they read me my rights again. I had no idea about, that I should wait for a lawyer or anything like that. Found that stuff out later and found out the hard way. So basically, I agreed to everything. I said, yeah, got no problem. They had the video on, they hit record, and I answered their questions. I remember them showing me a picture of the individual, asked me if I recognized him. I said yes, even though his face was, didn't look great. I was made aware that he was in hospital, or that he'd been taken to hospital, and they asked me some questions which I didn't think anything of at the time. Did you punch him in the head? Did you start it? I'm pretty sure I recall saying that I didn't start it, but, I got angry and had to be pulled off him. They asked me if I kicked him or stomped him in the head. I said, no, I didn't. I didn't recall stomping or booting him in the head, but when I was getting pulled up, I was throwing kicks, so I tried to kick a part of his body that was there. So I remember hitting him around his midsection and wherever I could reach, but I got yanked off by the guys. So the damage that I recall having been done was I had been striking his face a number of times because I was upset. That's not a good reason or excuse. I should have stopped when I think, but I had a bit to drink. And I made a stupid decision at the end of the day. So I answered all those questions, and then that's when I got hit with the grievous bodily harm charge. Now you fast forward a little bit, and then the lawyer, so the unit, got a Defence Force lawyer. He was good, but he was made it very clear that I was stupid and that I should never have given a statement without a lawyer present. I didn't know. I just figured tell the truth, accept the consequences, but I did not expect that I would be charged with GBH or that I would be staring down the barrel of going to jail for 6 years. So there was a bit of a kerfuffle and I think some communications went out to members of the unit at that time. Hey, we've just had this. If you get into trouble, the actual operators, they probably already knew this anyway, but if you get into trouble, do not, under any circumstances, give a statement to the police without legal representation or having consulted with a lawyer in that first. So anyway, all good in hindsight, eh? So I was staring at that, still had the cycle to finish, and I really didn't know. Now I've got this pressure. I felt pressure. I've got this pressure now of I've got to focus, and I have to work hard to pass each course on cycle and to pass each course well. At the same time, even if I get through the rest of the cycle, I don't know what's going to happen with this court hearing. I've got to go back to court in a month's time. Don't know what's going to happen. Then I may have to go back again. It may be adjourned, and then I may have to go back again. And I could be doing all of this for nothing. I could be doing all of this, and they go, yep, on your bike, you're out of the army and you're going to jail. So I'm battling with that internally, but I know that I want to be in the unit. And so I somehow just sort of compartmentalize that, bundle it up, bury it deep, and just focus on the courses and the programs that I've got to do, or the courses for the cycle that I have to complete. I was worried. I was scared. yeah, really didn't have anybody to speak to. I probably could have spoken to the training officer and training warrant officer, good men. Could have probably spoken to guys that I was on cycle with. But at that stage, like, I was a 21-year-old boy with these men, and I was thinking, I can't go to these men and tell them that I'm scared, that I'm worried. I need to just turn up, do this course, get through this course and make sure I pass it, do everything well as I can, and then prepare and get ready for the next course. And I felt I needed to act like it wasn't bothering me. Like, oh, yeah, sweet as, I'll be all right. Now, I wasn't thinking that at all. I wasn't thinking I would get off. I was in a world of hurt without showing it externally. I was really worried that everything that I wanted to do from the age of 14, when I first saw that book, a book about the SAS, I felt I was going to lose everything. And at the time as well, I was, obviously with my missus, we didn't have any children at that time. But I was like, man, I'm going to lose my career. There's no way I'm having my missus wait for 6 years. Like, you move on. Like, well, nobody deserves that. And I'm torn between trying to weighing up doing these courses as well as I can, but on the other hand, almost trying to prepare myself that I could lose it all, that I could go to jail, military career be over, won't have a missus, and got to start again. And what was I going to do? So that's to give you some context around the stupid decisions that I made in that night, leading up to, and then in that night, and then post giving the statement to the police. Now, I don't know if that's still the case, but I definitely learned a lesson from that. Thankfully, I never got in trouble with the police again and haven't been in trouble with them since. So that was back in 1999. We're in 2025 now. Haven't drunk a drop since that time either. So all drinking has ceased since that time. And definitely, I don't think it was the alcohol that caused it, but it definitely didn't help the situation, if that makes sense. So with that, lessons learned from there, fast forward to the final court hearing. So I think I had 1 or 2 adjournments before I then had to go again. And so this is, we're getting closer towards the pointy end of the cycle, and badging is just around the corner. Anyway, we go for what is the final court hearing. My lawyer stands up, puts forward the case. I'm sitting or standing, I think I was sitting, in the dock at the courthouse, one of the courthouses in Auckland. My training officer is dressed in his number ones. He's there as support. The lawyer is there. And what I didn't realise is that the guy that I'd had the fight with, he was there. He was sitting in the seating area where they have seats for people to come in. Now, I'm pretty confident that either the unit, either my training officer or the lawyer or somebody reached out to him and asked him to come to court that day. Otherwise, I have no idea how he would have known, unless he was asking the police, hey, when's this idiot going to court so that I can see him go to jail or whatever. So I assume that that's what the unit did. And I'm really grateful that if that's what they did, that happened. I'm also very grateful that if that is what they did, that the victim accepted the invitation and came to court. Now, if the victim came to court to say and do what he said and did on that day just off his own back, then, man, I'm just super grateful to him for making that call. I remember his name well. I remember his full name, or his first, middle, and last name. I don't know if he has 2 middle names, but I won't share it on here. So I'm sitting or standing in the dock. I'm in the dock. The lawyer stands up, speaks, and then the judge, after the lawyer's finished speaking, says, that may be the case, words to the effect. I don't remember the exact words, but I do remember these words. He says, I still need special circumstances or reasons to not send him to jail, to not send me to jail. So I believe the the lawyer that I had spoke about my good military service record, hadn't been charged. This was a case of, and he had been working. So the reasons that there were these adjournments prior to is that they were trying to get it reduced from GBH to common assault. Still not great, I know, but it carried a far less penalty than GBH. And for whatever reason, the police or whoever was involved were not willing to reduce it to a common assault charge. And whatever, that's their decision. So when the judge said I still need special circumstances to not send this person to jail, I knew I was toast. At this stage, I didn't know that the victim or the person that I'd had the fight with was in court. And then then the lawyer said to the judge, the lawyer that was representing me, said to the judge, says, "Oh, Your Honour, I don't know if it helps," or words to the effect, "I don't know if it helps, but I believe the victim is here in the court today. If he has anything that he'd like to say, I'm not sure." And then that was the first I'd heard of it. I didn't know that the victim was there. And then the judge looked around and said, "Oh, is the victim here in court today?" And then he stood up, put up his hand, he said, "Oh, yes, Your Honour, I'm the victim, I suppose you could say." And the judge said, "Oh, basically, is there anything you'd like to say? Is there anything that you have to add?" And he said, as I was there in the dock looking at him and looking at the judge, and I just looked at the lawyer thinking, what are you doing? This guy's just going to bury me. I'm definitely going to jail now. But I bit my tongue, didn't say anything, and I had already started mentally preparing myself that this is it, I'm going to jail. He stands up and says, "I'm the victim, I suppose you could say, Your Honour. I came here today to see justice be done, but I didn't come to see this guy lose his career over what happened." And I was like, whoa, really hit me hard. Like, I started to feel hope that I wasn't going to go to jail. And the judge said, "Oh, so you don't want to see this guy go to jail?" He was fairly blunt and to the point. That was my impression of the judge anyway. And he goes, "No, Your Honour, I don't want to see him go to jail. We both had a bit to drink. I probably shouldn't have hit him, or I shouldn't have hit him, and he probably shouldn't have got us carried away or lost it the way that he did. But as a couple of guys, we'd both had a bit to drink. We got into a fight, and I ended up second best." And I don't know if I was already had tears coming down my face while I was in the dock at that time. I know I definitely had tears and was crying after, when I managed to catch him and thank him and hug him before he left, before we left the courthouse. And then the judge, I remember sort of vividly the judge saying, "Okay, so you don't want to see this guy go to jail?" I said, "No." It's okay. And it was based on what the victim had shared. That's the reason I didn't go to jail. Nothing that the lawyer said or did, because the judge said he needed special circumstances. The special circumstance was the guy that I had the fight with being kind enough and compassionate enough to come to court on that day, which was my final hearing, like I was being sentenced, I was going to get the outcome, and speaking and saying the words that he said. Saved my backside and enabled me to be able to go on and have a career. So I ended up getting a suspended sentence for 12 months. Judge rattled off, "Okay, suspended sentence 12 months. You get in trouble between now and these 12 months, you're going to be punished for whatever additional crime you commit, as well as you'll go and serve time for this crime." And I got I think $1,000 or a $2,000 fine, and had to pay the medical bills for the victim that I'd had the fight with. I got off really, as I look back on that, I got off really light, and I was just super grateful that happened. We went out, I saw him, thanked him, hugged him. I don't know that he was too happy, I can't really remember, but he was gracious enough to allow me to give me that opportunity to thank him. to look him in the eye and thank him for what he had done for me. And then never seen him again, never spoken to him since. Don't know what he's doing. Don't know where he is. But he's the only reason I didn't go to jail, and he's the only reason I was able to have a career. So we fast forward after all of that, and I'm trying to not use too many R's and ums, but I am hearing myself and catching myself saying them. Apologies about that. We go forward to now the court stuff is all done, and now there's a handful of courses left on the cycle, not too many, and this huge weight is just lifted off my shoulders. I can now focus purely on, I do this, I pass these courses, and I stay the course of what I'm doing, and I don't make any more stupid mistakes. I'm going to get there, and I'm going to be badged, and I'm going to serve in this unit, and then, do a few years here and then go to the next one. Do a few years there and then go to the next one. I could dream again. I could start to have those thoughts. Anyway, all of that was done. We carried on with cycle as normal. I had, prior to that final court hearing, the sentencing one, I had a meeting with the training officer. I don't know if the training warrant officer was there at the time, but the training officer, both of them great men. Well, I think they're great men anyway. They were on my cycle. And I remember the training officer definitely being there and speaking with him. And he spoke with me and he said, listen, Hawtai, if everything goes well in your court case, in your court hearing, then you will be under the microscope. Okay? So if you don't go to jail, you can stay here. If you complete all the courses, you'll get badged. And when you get assigned to a squadron or posted to a squadron here within the New Zealand SAS, you're going to be under the microscope, basically on probation. And if you mess up, you'll get in RTU'd, return to unit, back to battalion. And you may not get a chance to come back. I was stoked to hear that. I understood exactly what the task was. I understood the consequences. But when he pulled me aside and gave me that information, man, the burden that I was feeling just lifted even more. And I was like, yeah, understood. Yes, staff. Yes, sir. I won't stuff up. I felt really good. I was like, okay, cool. I need to stay the course. I felt confident that I was doing well on cycle. Not confident to the point that, yeah, I've got this in the bag. Definitely not, because you're always being assessed. And I think if anybody has that attitude, that's not what they're looking for. So I knew that I felt confident that I was doing well, but that was largely because I had these grown men. Well, I looked to them as men because I was the youngest on my cycle, and the rest, I think, may have been mid-20s, and then there was some late 20s, early 30s, one guy late 30s. He knows who he is, and just much more experienced than me. Many of them had done 3 to 5 years or more in the army, and some of them were corporals, sergeants, officers were on there as well, and just much more life experience than me. So I felt I was doing well because I was fortunate and blessed to be surrounded by these men and learn from them and try to apply what I was seeing, what I was observing, and or when I would take the time to ask questions, try to apply the feedback that they would give me. Excuse me. So complete the cycle. I complete all the courses that were necessary for the cycle to be eligible to be badged. I remember each of us receiving our Sandy beret with the wing dagger, the New Zealand one, and being told to go away, shape the berets for the beret parade. Now, the beret parade was either the next day or a couple of days later. I think it may have been the next day. A bit hazy on that one. Regardless, we all got them at the same time. We were back in the barracks that afternoon, evening, shaping them in the water, shaving them, getting all the fluff off them so they don't look like a big baker's hat flopping in the wind. So when you get it, when you receive it on the bureau parade, on the badge, and you put it on, you look neat and sharp. Went through all of that, shaped the beret. This is awesome. Looking forward to this, like the culmination of everything. Grateful for what I've been through. Really glad that I didn't end up in jail. Now I'm here with some of the best men in the world that I've known and looking forward to serving with them. Then I get a call and get asked to go back. So we'd shaped the berets, we'd handed them in because they needed to have them. We had to put a piece of masking tape inside with our name on it and then hand those in so that they could have them. They have a set order, so they could hand them out when your name's called out. They know who's exactly beret you're getting, so you're not putting on somebody else who's got a real small head and it can't fit on my fat head, or vice versa. So I go back to this meeting, I meet with, and I know both of them are there this time. Training officer and the training warrant officer. Both of these two good men are there. I sit down, they sit me down, tell me to sit down, and they tell me that, Hawtai, unfortunately, you won't be getting badged in the ceremony with the rest of your cycle. What we will do, though, what we want to do is, or what will happen, is you will be sent back to your unit, back to 1st Battalion, 1 RNZIR, and you'll be there for 6 months. And then you come back halfway through the cycle next year. So this is nearing the end of that year, nearing the end of 1999. I think badging might have been September, October, somewhere around there, or maybe it's August, September, something like that. It's nearing the end of that year anyway. The downhill slope. You go back to battalion for 6 months. You come back whenever it was. It might have been March, April. So from that time through to March, April, January, February, March, April. So we must have had a couple of months left in that year of 1999. Come back, carry on with the cycle. So join in with that next cohort that's on cycle that following year in 2000 and go through essentially half or maybe a little over half the cycle again. Do all of those courses, still need to pass them well, but complete those courses, then you'll get badged with that second cohort or that next cohort. I felt betrayed. Like, in a nutshell, I felt like I'd been lied to. I felt betrayed. I felt gutted. Everything what I had been told leading up to that, getting the beret, shaping it, masking tape in, name on it, handing it in, thinking, yep, I'm so excited. I'm going to stand on the parade ground in the compound that we were at the time. And I'm just so looking forward to receiving my beret. I hadn't even looked to invite anybody, not my missus at the time, not my mum. I was just so excited about the beret. I didn't care who was going to be there. To me, I didn't need to have anybody there. But when I received that information, I felt really hurt and I was gutted. And my 21-year-old brain, who couldn't look forward, who couldn't have the patience to hold it out or to hold out and come back and do what they had asked, I immediately said, no, I'm not coming back. I'm going to go to Australia. So I wasn't the most confident individual. To be honest, I'm probably still not. I think I am, but maybe I'm not. But I definitely wasn't a confident young man at 21 years of age speaking with these seasoned SAS veterans of the unit. And here I am, saying, no, I'm not coming back. I'm going to go to Australia. I think not only did I catch myself off guard, I think I caught them off guard. But not so off guard that these two men likely understood how hurt and upset I felt. And I have no doubt that my training officer at that time likely recalled the words that he shared with me about, if you don't go to jail, then you're going to be under the microscope. You complete all the courses, you get badged, you're going to be under the microscope once you go to a squadron, if you make it to a squadron. You'll be on a probationary period. You better cross your T's and dot your I's, essentially, pull your head in, and you focus on doing what you're supposed to do and stay out of trouble. I had agreed to all of that. I had no issue with that. You put me on probation for 2 years, I don't care. If I have to be the broom boy and sweep everything and clean everything, clean the cars, clean the weapons, clean the area where the holding area or wherever we are, I would have done that. I would have gladly done it. But when everything shifted and I got told, no, come back in 6 months, I was like, no, I'm not coming back. I'm going to go to Australia. I felt if that's how you're going to treat me after what you've told me, and it wasn't directly at him, this is just the whole bigger picture, because I know it must have come from higher up. And I don't know what was going through their head, but I could feel in that room that they may not have felt sorry for me, but they could feel there was an energy in that room that I think they understood where I was coming from, that I was hurt. They wanted me to think about it, go away, think about it. 6 months will be over pretty quick, and then you'll be back here before you know it. It's a lot to throw away. Don't throw it away. There's no guarantee. I do remember, I think it might have been the training warrant officer. It's like, well, there's no guarantee that you'll pass the Australian selection. And that, when he said that inside, I don't think I showed it in that room in the office at that time, but inside me, I was like, oh, effing show you. I'm going to pass that selection course just to stick it up your backside. That's what was going on in my head. There's no way I was going to speak to him like that, or to both of these good men. But all it did was just light a fire under me. Tell me I can't do it. I'm going to show you I'm going to do it. And so, yeah, that was that part of the meeting. And then I went back to the barracks. I believe a couple of the boys asked me what that was all about. And I said, yeah, I won't be getting badged the same time as you. And they're like, what? Like, why is that? And so shared with them what the option was for me, that the door wasn't fully closed. And I think they were surprised too. And I said, yeah, no, I'm not coming back. I'm going to go to Australia. Because they know, we know, I knew how much work I'd put in. I knew what I was doing. But I was upset and I was hurt and I was angry. And I was going to go, well, if I was going to do that, see you fuzz later. I'm going to go to Australia and I'm going to stay out of trouble and I'm going to earn my beret and earn a place within the Special Air Service. So that happened. Then not long after, I got called up to go see the RSM for the unit. So training warrant officer pulled me in to see the RSM. Really good guy as well. And he had my beret sitting in his office on a shelf and basically said to me the same thing. 6 months, not that far away. It's not that long. Go back. By the time you leave, you'll only have about 3 to 4 months at battalion. Then you'll be back here before you know it. And that beret, he pointed on his shelf, and that beret there will be yours if you complete all the cycle again. And then, come badging time, you receive your beret. I told him the same thing. I said, no, I'm going to go to Australia. I was just pig-headed, stubborn, and that was my response to anything that anybody was going to say. If it wasn't, you're on probation, yep, okay, you're going to get badged, but you're the bum boy for the next 12 months, 2 years, because you did this stupid thing. Okay, cool, I can deal with that, but I'm here in the unit. I'm learning, and if jobs come up, I'm in there. And yep, if there's deservicing and cleaning to do, then yep, I'm the person that's got to do it because I made that stupid mistake. So be it. After the RSM, so I've spoken with the training warrant officer, the training officer, the RSM. That didn't work. Then I got pulled into the CO's office. So the commanding officer, he spoke with me, basically said the same thing. Come back. You have an opportunity to come back. It's a lot to throw away. You don't want to throw it away. And he was right. I didn't want to throw it away. all of them, all three of them up to that point, the CO being the fourth, were all correct. I didn't want to throw it away. But I felt like they had lied to me. I felt like what I had been told wasn't the truth. And as blunt as it may sound, I figured if this unit that I look up to, that I want to be a part of, I've heard integrity is a huge part of what this unit looks for and what it's about. And they've just told me one thing, and then they've just completely shifted it. And now they're telling me a completely different story, and I have to go and do something else. That to me didn't line up. As young as I was and as inexperienced in life as I was at that time, I knew the difference between when you tell somebody something and following through with it versus when you tell somebody something and you don't follow through with it. And that didn't sit well with me. So I felt betrayed, I felt hurt, I felt like I'd been lied to, and so I didn't receive my beret on that day on the badging parade. I was privileged to stand on the sideline. I was standing, so those members that did invite family members for the badging, there was seating, so I helped set up with all that stuff. Family members and that were sitting there that had come to see their family members receive their beret, and I was standing behind. There was a few of us. There were a couple of other guys that we were on the same selection together. They were territorial force when they did selection and passed, but they weren't accepted to go on to the cycle, that the very next cycle like I was. They had to go to an infantry battalion, and they went to infantry corps training. They completed that. Then I think they spent some time in the battalion leading up to, and then they were brought up to Auckland in preparation for the following year's cycle. So I already knew a couple of them, and I could have come back. So I was standing in that line next to them in uniform, and watching the guys that I had just been on cycle with, that I had just been through all the courses with, go up one by one and receive their wing dagger, their beret and sky blue corps belt. And so watching that hurt big time for me personally. And you know what, to a degree, for me, as I reflected on that, there was a bit of entitlement from me too. Like, I was like, why should I have to go through half the cycle again? Like, I've already done it. I've completed them. I've shown that I can complete those courses well, because if I didn't complete them well, I wouldn't have been progressing and I wouldn't have got to where I got to. So that was a poor attitude to have on my part, massively poor attitude to have. But that's where I was. You bundle that in, that was probably buried deeper than all the hurt that I was feeling or feeling lied to. That was definitely in there, and it's on reflection where I've thought about, oh yeah, you know what, I was a bit fat-headed as well, and I thought, why should I have to do half the cycle again? I already did all of that. So after that happened, finished out the time that I was there, got sent back to battalion. Not long after, once I was back in battalion, I applied to go to Australia. And that's where the journey recommenced and restarted. So that's the long version of why I didn't get badged in the New Zealand SAS after successfully completing the selection, being deemed suitable to go into the cycle, and completing all the courses that were necessary prior to that particular badging for that cohort and that cycle that I was on anyway. But the reasons why I didn't. In summary, I made a really poor decision with regards to drinking that night, for one. I made a poor decision in terms of the fight that I had and needing to be pulled off and not having the wherewithal to control myself, pull myself off, remove myself off the person that I was having the altercation with. Yeah. Being stupid and giving cheeky responses to the police, making the mistake of thinking just tell the truth and give a statement on video and without any legal representation or without any legal counsel or advice first, and not being humble enough yeah, that's not being humble enough to just take the kick in the guts, do the 6 months back at battalion, and then come back on the cycle and do half the cycle again, or whatever amount of the cycle needed to be done. Complete that well, and then get badged with that group, not having the humility to do that for me. One last point, there was a moment leading up to, so it would have been, oh man, at this stage I probably would have had about a month, if that, maybe less than a month to go before I would have been allowed back on the cycle. And that was, we were Hunter Force for those that were doing their combat survival. So our battalion was tasked with being a Hunter Force for those that were on their cycle, escape and evasion, and the training warrant officer was there, and I think there might have been one other. I remember the training warrant officer being there anyway. And they knew that I was there. They pulled me aside. This is how much work that they did genuinely try to put in to get me to come back. Pulled me aside. The guys on the cycle were doing their bits and pieces deservicing by that stage because all the interrogation piece had been done. So we were the guards taking them in and out of the interrogation room. And I was like, yeah, I know what this is like. And he still tried to convince me to come back. The door was still open. Regardless of what I had said to the training officer, training one officer, the RSM and the CEO, they felt and hoped, I think they hoped that I would have changed my mind, that I would have calmed down, and that, hey, there's about a month left. The unit's right here. Come back, get on the cycle. That bureau in the RSM's office is yours once you complete the cycle. I still said no. I said, no, I'm not coming back. So probably around March, April, that time, that year, the following year in 2000, I discharged from the army in October 2000. It was the 8th, and I started in the Australian Army on the 9th of October 2000. So out one day, straight into the Australian Army the next. Leading up to that, there was some back and forth, some interviews. I had to go over, do some testing, flew back, took leave whilst I was in the New Zealand Army to do that. At the time, I had to have a couple of letters, reference letters. I've still got those. The reference letters that I got one from, he was a captain at the time, Bill Bestick. He's the guy that I interviewed on the Epic Aotearoa podcast, one of the first ones that I interviewed for the Who Dares Win series. Now, since then, he's gone on to be a doctor, a pilot, who knows what else. Awesome man. But I've still got his reference. And the other one was an officer at the time. Panda was his nickname, or Captain Pantling. And I've still got his letter of reference. So I had to have those to submit with my application to go into the Australian Army. I can't remember exactly when I started that process. Obviously, it was earlier in 2000 by the time I went back to battalion. Now, whether that was February or March, I don't know. But by October that year, with all the other bits and pieces, the testing and interviews and stuff and getting reference letters, etc., all of that stuff had been done. I was out on the 8th of October, started on the 9th of October 2000 in the Australian Army, and then went on from there. So hopefully that should give a fairly comprehensive answer in terms of why I didn't get badged and how I almost ended up in jail instead of having the privilege and opportunity to go and serve in the Australian Special Air Service. Grateful for that experience, grateful for the learnings from the poor decisions that I made. I don't have any regrets about that because I think for a while I probably did have regrets. I was like, man, I should have just gone back. I should have done that, get that thing, serve a little bit, and then go do the Australian one. But I've let go of that. I don't have any regrets of what I did. I did what I set out to do. I did what I told the training officer and training warrant officer, the RSM and the CEO at the time, what I was going to do, in spite of what any of them or people may have thought about me. I knew what I wanted and nothing was going to stop me. So I'm grateful for all those learning experiences. Grateful if you stuck around this long to hear me jabber on about how I gratefully and thankfully avoided prison thanks to the victim. So definitely grateful to him as well. Without his compassion, without his kindness and grace to be there at court to share and say the words that he said and basically save my bacon. It's the only reason I didn't go to jail. I likely would not be here right now sharing this experience with you. So thank you again for sticking around. Thank you for those that have shown some support and reached out, and thank you for those that I've had the interactions with, those that have had queries about what they should do. Do I do the New Zealand one? Do I do the Australian one? Man, if you have the opportunity, I say do both. There's plenty of Kiwis, and I knew this before I left to go to Australia. There have been plenty of New Zealand operators, guys that have completed the New Zealand SAS, that have gone on to the British, to 22 SAS, where it all founded, where it was created. And many of them are still over there now, serving and having great careers and serving, to the best of their ability. So if that's what you're wanting to do, then get up, get out, get after it, and keep hammering. Thanks again for sticking around, and there's another R. We'll see you in the next video.